In this tutorial, you will learn about the main components of a PC and how they will go together. First, we need to remove the side panels of the case so we can install the components inside. Great! Next up, we'll install the power supply unit or PSU. This provides the power to all of the components. It lies behind a PSU mount which needs to be removed before the PSU can be installed. Power supply or PSU composed of main power, fan, and modular ports. Mains power. The PSU takes power from the wall socket. PSUs are rated from 200 watts to 1600 watts, and you need to make sure you have enough wattage for your system. Fan. PSUs generate a lot of heat. This fan expels hot air. Modular ports. These ports allow you to attach cables that carry power to the components. Modular means that you only have to attach the cables for the components you have. Install the motherboard. At the heart of the PC is the motherboard, and all the major components connect to it. HDD SATA ports. These ports are called SATA or Serial ATA ports, and they are where the hard drives are connected. Front panel headers. This connector is where you attach all of the ports and buttons on your case to the motherboard. CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is used in the motherboard to remember its settings when it has no power, even when not attached to a PSU. Standoffs. Motherboards are screwed to the case using standoffs, which hold the motherboard away from the metal of the case. PCI slots. The PCI slots are very high-speed connections to the motherboard for PCI cards. The most common PCI cards are graphics cards, but can also be Wi-Fi or sound cards. I/O ports. The input and output or I/O ports are where you plug in all your peripherals like your keyboard and mouse. CPU socket. This is where the CPU sits. It has shield that holds it in place. RAM slots. These are the slots where the system memory or RAM goes. They will only allow one type of RAM, and most motherboards have between 2 or 8 slots. Power. Motherboards need enough power to run the components attached to them, so they will usually have more than one connector to the PSU. Install the CPU. The Central Processing Unit or CPU is the PC's brain. It performs the calculation based on information from some components and passes the results to others. Pins. The CPU has pins that plug into the socket on the motherboard. Each CPU model has its own pin layout and orientation in the socket. Processor. The processor or die is the chip that does all the calculations in the computer. It is very delicate and is tightly packed so gets hot quickly. Heat plate. The CPU has a heat plate that is attached directly to the processor. This is designed to quickly get the CPU's heat away to the CPU cooler. Apply the thermal paste. The CPU gets very hot and it needs to be cooled by a cooler. First, we apply the thermal paste to the CPU to improve the conductivity between it and the cooler. Install the CPU cooler. Now we can install the CPU cooler. There are two main cooling types, air or water. Bracket. The bracket attaches the cooler to the motherboard. Each CPU model has its own bracket, size, and shape. Cooler plate. This plate makes contact with the CPU through the thermal paste, and it is made from a highly heat conductive material, usually copper. Fan. The fan blows through the fins to move the hot air away from the heatsink. Heatsink fins. The fins give a large surface area for the CPU's heat to be dissipated. Power. The fan needs power and this cable is plugged into a dedicated CPU fan socket on the motherboard. Install the graphics card. The next important components is the graphic processing unit or GPU. GPUs are often mini computers in themselves with their own processor and memory to calculate complex visuals of today's games. Graphics processor. At the heart of the GPU is the graphics processor, and it turns instructions from the CPU into something you can see on your screen. Fan and heatsink. The GPU gets the hot and needs a large heatsink and fan to keep it cool. PCI connector. This connector fits into the PCI slot of the motherboard, and most of the motherboards have dedicated PCI slots just for GPUs. Dual GPUs. Many GPUs use this connector to allow for multiple cards to be linked together for more power. Some systems allow up to 4 cards. Install the memory. Next is the memory, or RAM, or Random Access Memory. RAM is very fast memory that a CPU uses to hold the programs that are running on the PC. RAMs comes in sticks and many of the same type can be combined to give the PC more memory to use. Locks. Motherboard RAM slots have locking switches that grip the RAM here and hold it in place. Connector. RAM connects to the motherboard with a special connector. Each type of RAM has a special notch cut out to make sure that you don't put the wrong type together. Memory chips. The chips on the stick of RAM are very fast types of memory, designed to hold programs so the computer can access them as quickly as possible. Install the hard drive. The last major component is the hard drive, or HDD. The hard drive stores all of the data for the operating system, the programs, and the user's photos, music, and videos. Spinning disk. A hard drive has a disk inside that spins, a bit like a DVD. The faster the disk spins, the faster the data can be accessed. Some server drives spins at over 15,000 RPM. SATA and power. These connectors are used to connect the HDD to the motherboard, SATA, and the power supply. Additional cooling. All the components of the PC gives out heat. Case fan will help keep the temperature down by moving the hot air out of the case. Fins. The fins control which way the air moves. Look out for an arrow on the side of the fan to show which way the fan blows. Motor. Many fans and motherboards support variable speeds so the fan only runs as fast as it needs to. Close the case. Now we just need to replace all the covers to protect all those delicate components. Turn on PC. Now we need to plug in all the cables and power the PC on.